Welcome to another episode of Treasure Corals. In today's video, we are going to do some coral dipping, so let's dive right in. Many of my viewers know that I have multiple reef aquariums, and one of the most important aspects of this hobby is making sure that your corals are as parasite-free as possible. Nothing is more devastating than after you invested years into your coral reef collection to introduce some sort of a pest and then see either all of your corals or even just the majority of them suffer because of this. Now there's many resources on the internet about the different types of pests, but the one that's near and dear to my heart is Acropora species. So for Acropora, there's a whole bunch of different parasites, but the ones that I personally dread the most is Acropora eating flatworms. In today's video, I will go through the full process of dipping some of the corals that I have been cooking in my quarantine system. Now, I will walk you through the whole process. I don't know what I will discover, and today it will be a surprise to both of us. Now, for your dips, I'm going to be using the Revive with two little fishies. You will need some sort of a magnification light. So I love this particular lighting because it also gives me this close-up view and also great light. There's a couple of containers where I'm going to put about 1 gallon of water each. It makes it easy to then put the amount of Revive. I will use the tweezers for accessing the corals, and I will also use gloves. Finally, I will use one of these tools to blow on coral, and they'll have cutters handy just in case, as well as some paper towels. With that said, let's start the actual dipping process. This is my frag tank, and you can see that I've got quite a few corals cooking here, and these acros are the ones that we are going to be dipping today. One of the things that I do is once in a while I inspect them using this flipper, so I can actually zoom in and see what's going on there. I can pick it up with my tweezers, such as this, so I can grab the tweezers, get one of the corals up and get it closer and examine from the bottom, from the top, and just do it one by one. But let's actually do some cool dipping. We have two containers here. Each one has about 1 gallon of salt water from the tank. And what we are going to do is, one of them is going to be our dip. The Revive that I'm using says there's 4 capfuls for 1 gallon, which is exactly what we want. So let's easily measure it in. 1, 2, 3, and finally 4. And we will use the tweezers to just make it more even. And how many corals we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 corals. So the instructions, I think, say go from at least a few minutes to up to 15 minutes. So I think we will pick around 10. And let's get going. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this little guy 7. So we will use the this container later on to do just a rinse before they're going to go back to the tank. But we are here, and I'm going to start the timer. So I'll do it in 5-minute increments. So we've been talking for about, I'd say, 40 seconds. But here is the timer. And one thing that we want to be doing is using this little contraption to be blowing on the coral and seeing if anything will come off of it. Usually whenever those things come off, especially the acroporeal eating flatworms, I find that with Revive you need to wait at least 3-4 minutes before they will dislodge. Now, another thing that I do here is I will use the magnifying glass to examine the coral a little bit. So get this open, and then I will just lift it up and look underneath to see if there is any eggs deposited on the base. Now notice that also with the base I have cut off all the bases of coral on all the plugs, because this is usually where things will get mostly located. So here as well, this guy, so, and when I move them around, this is also does a little bit of this flow, helps with the flow, so it helps to dislodge the acroporeal eating flatworms. So once again, look underneath. I'm going to inspect every coral very carefully. As the time goes on, I usually flip each coral and just examine for any other abnormalities, and if I see anything I will try to make a note of it and maybe even cut off. So for example, this coral here, I'm seeing that there's a couple of dead spots, and I will probably just use these cutters, and I'll cut off those couple of dead spots that look a little bit funny to me here, and maybe here. So I want only the good tissue. I want to be able to see everything in the coral. So at the end I don't want to introduce or risk anything abnormal. Okay, so we've got this guy. Let's take a look at this little fella. So I don't see any bugs. I don't see any eggs in here as well. Let's look at this guy. None over here. Notice that I have applied a little bit of glue a few weeks ago, just to make sure that there's no tissue where they can deposit any eggs. This one looks good. This guy looks good as well. And finally, this big colony. Usually you see it right away if there's some enemy lurking at the gates. Finally, this guy. So here we are. All of them are looking pretty decent. Now let's continue giving them some agitation to blow off any potential acropore eating flatworms. And let's see if anything will come off. One thing I always feel very bad about is killing all the pods. So I definitely am attached to all those crustaceans, the good ones, and I want as thriving of a population of them in my aquariums as possible. But unfortunately, there's not much you can do about this. So sometimes you will see them come off. But the good thing so far about what I'm seeing is that there's no acropore eating flatworms that are coming off from any of the coral, which is excellent news, and that's exactly what I want to see. So sometimes I would use this approach 2-3 times and just make sure that nothing comes off of it before I find that they are ready to go into my main display. I think we have another 2 minutes left of doing this, and right after that I'm going to do some rinsing. So we have now under a minute left. Nothing has come off, which is excellent news. I think that this guy looks a little bit funny on some of the tissue where I see something weird going on, so I think I'm going to keep him in quarantine for a little bit just to make sure that nothing funky gets through, but the rest of the corals are looking a-okay, and I'm not too worried about them being brown. They will, that's a quarantine system after all, they will color back up, no problem, in good coral condition. And I'm also using these black containers because I find that all the parasites that I'm primarily trying to catch are white or clear, and they really are easy to spot over here. So here we are, just over 10 minutes, and I think it's time to start rinsing the corals. Starting with these guys over here. So I'll throw everybody in first. And as you can see, nothing has come off. So now over here, I'm going to rinse them carefully and put them in the quarantine for another few hours, just so that they are not in shock of the new water, of a different water in the aquarium, and then they are going to go in. What do you think of my quarantine process? What would you do differently, or what things I might be missing or can improve upon? I'm really curious to read your comments. With that said, thank you for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe this video.